viewers, good afternoon everyone. Welcome back to Matafe Academy. My name is Nifon Ebo. In the section of this video, we will be discussing types of mapping. And in our previous video, we talked about function and what kind of a mapping is a function and type of function that is not, what type of mapping that is not a function. So in our today's video, we want to look at types of mapping. Okay, so before we start, please subscribe to the channel page and always remember to click on your notification button. So let's go. We have 5 types of mapping initially, but we will be discussing the 4. And in our next video, we'll be looking at the composite mapping. So we have the number 1 mapping to be what? A one-to-one mapping. What is a one-to-one mapping? This is a type of mapping in which every element in the domain has a unique image in the co-domain. I repeat myself, a one-to-one mapping is a type of mapping in which every element in the domain has a unique element in the co-domain. For example, if we have state X and we have state Y, and this maps to this, where we have the element of X to be A, B, C, and we have the element of Y to be 1, 2, 3. Now, this is called what? This is your domain, and this is what? Your co-domain, or we call this range. So what is one-to-one mapping says that every element in the domain has a unique image in the codomain. That every element here has a unique image in the codomain. So every element in set X have a unique image in what? Set Y. So we call this type of mapping a one-to-one mapping. We call this a one-to-one mapping. So let's look at the second one. We have here onto mapping. And onto mapping is a type of mapping in which every element in the codomain has a unique image in the domain. Remember, one-to-one mapping was that every element here has a unique image in the codomain. But in the onto mapping says that every image in the codomain must have a unique image in the domain. For example, we have set X, we have here set Y. Under set X, we have A, we have B, we have C, we have D. We have 3, we have 5, we have 7, we have 9. And this is mapped to this. This is saying that every element here must have an image here. For a mapping to be an onto mapping, every element here must have an image here. So if this map to this map to this, this map to this, and this map to this, this is what? An onto mapping. And this onto mapping is also a one-to-one mapping because every element here also have a unique image in the codomain. So we call this an onto mapping. Let me illustrate an example of a mapping that is not an onto mapping, so that you will not conclude that every mapping is a. If we have an image like this, we have an image like this, and this is mapped to this. We have A, we have B, we have C, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, and this is mapped to this. This can map to this, and this can map to what? This can map to this. If you look at this mapping, every image in the domain has a unique image in the what? In the codomain. And this is a function. And it's also what? A one-to-one mapping. Because every image here has a unique image in the codomain. But every image in the codomain does not have an image in the domain. This is your domain. And this is what? Your range. or we call it codomain. So because this 4 does not have any image here, this is not what? This is not an onto mapping. It is not what? It is not an onto mapping. It is not an onto mapping. So let's progress. We have what we call identity mapping. Identity mapping is a type of mapping that all the elements in the X have the same element mapped to the same element in the codomain. All the elements in the domain mapped to the same elements in the codomain. Let's look at identity mapping in this form. Number 3, we have what we call the identity mapping. For example, we have this. And this is mapped to this. Remember, this is your range, and this is what? Your domain. B, C, B, A. And identity matrix said that every element in the domain mapped to the same element in the codomain. This is what this means, that every time you see this kind of mapping, this is the type of mapping that we call what? Identity mapping. This is an identity mapping, and this is not an identity mapping. This is not an identity mapping. So this is an identity mapping. We are going to the last one, which we said that is a word, a constant mapping. A constant mapping is a type of mapping in which all the elements in the domain map to a constant element in the codomain. For example, an example is always explaining more, so that is why I always emphasize on my example. This map to this, remember, and this is your word, this is called your range. Please don't always forget, and this is called your domain. So if you have elements like A, I'm using simple elements, and we have elements like C, we have B, we have A. And they said that a constant mapping is a type of mapping in which all the elements in the domain map to a constant element in the codomain. So this is what that means. This map to the same thing, this map to the same thing, and this also map to the same thing. Remember, this is a function. So because it is a function, and the type of mapping here is called what? A constant mapping, where all the elements map to the same image in the codomain. So this will be the end of our class. In our next video, we'll be looking at another type of mapping called the composite mapping, and we'll be discussing type of function as well. So always subscribe to the channel page and click on your notification button. Thank you. Finally.